Former Illinois Governor Blagojevich says this. State lawmakers violated his constitutional rights several years ago when he was removed from office.
Yeah, and he claims the way they removed him back then was wrong, and the fact that he can't run for another state post is illegal. And now he's fighting back with a lawsuit. The former governor joins us right now with more on this lawsuit and what it means to him. First of all, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. So the first thing I think of when I hear that you're filing this lawsuit, that it means you're planning to run for office somewhere in Illinois in some capacity. So first of all, is that the case?
No, I have no plans to run for any specific office. It's ironic. I can legally run for president of the United States, but I can't run for the alderman here in the neighborhood I live in. I can't run for the Board of Tax Appeals, but I can run for a seat in the United States Congress. I can run for the United States Senate, but I can't run for mayor. I'm not interested in running for any of those things. Politics is a rough and tumble business. And, I love my wife, and she sure hates politics. And I sure don't want to do anything that would make her run away from me. So that's not what this is about. This is about the rights of the voters. It's about the right of the people to choose their own leaders in free, fair, and honest elections. It's about the right of people to make the choice, not a bunch of politicians in Springfield who passed a law to disqualify me from running. And it was based upon a poisonous fruit. The fact is that this big lie that I was trying to sell Obama's Senate seat was proven to be a lie. The appellate court said that that was legal political horse trading. Those conversations were initiated by then President-elect Obama. But based upon that big lie and the inability of the state legislature to allow me, the refusal to allow me to play tapes to prove the full context of the conversations that were taken out of context to prejudice the public against me, that created an environment that led to what I believe was an unconstitutional impeachment. And there's a bigger problem in American politics today. It's the weaponizing of prosecutions and the impeachment process for partisan political reasons. This is going to destroy our democracy if somebody doesn't fight back. So in my small way, this is part of that fight to try to protect the rights of voters as well as my own constitutional rights that I'm entitled to. And I'm still trying to get all those tapes played.
Let me ask you this. So Anita and I were sitting in these very chairs, February of last year. You came out in front of your house. I still remember, I think you'd cut yourself shaving, and there was a mass of humanity there. And I remember sitting here thinking, he's going to say something right now about how he's not done and he's going back. That was 18 months ago. So what's changed between then and now for you to decide to file this suit?
Well, for one thing, I'm off of probation and a year early because of good behavior. I do want to say that. And so now I'm freed up to be able to pretty much go out and pursue all the freedoms that are available to everybody else that I wasn't entitled to when I was under the supervision of the court. So that's what's changed. That's one of the situations. And the other is, again, I feel like in the long run, the truth of what happened here will one day come out. And I didn't break any laws across any lines. It was all politics they put me in prison for. I wouldn't give in to what those prosecutors wanted me to do. They were trying to break my will to resist. I wouldn't do it. They dangled a light sentence after they failed to convict me after the first trial. I wouldn't do it. And they buried me in prison for 14 years for non-crimes. Now I stood up, and now I'm fighting back in some ways where I think I have a chance to be able to do something to undo those wrongs. And this is one step towards that. There'll be other steps. And again, there's a larger issue. It's about the right of the voters to make the decisions, not politicians and prosecutors.
Well, some might say this is quite the battle that you're going to be putting up here, almost kind of like a David and Goliath kind of thing. Why do you believe that this argument that you're going to present is going to be so compelling that it could change the minds of the state legislature or, convince a judge?
Well, convincing the judge is the first order of business. Well, I'm given a chance at a hearing to bring in all the evidence, then I think it's going to be persuasive, and it will be hard for them to not undo the removal portion. The removal portion's done. I can't go back and become the governor that way. But the disqualification that doesn't allow me to run for anything in the future, that's what I'm attacking. And I think, again, if I'm given a chance to show that Madigan, who controls that political establishment in Springfield, which has been a rotten political establishment that Madigan led, that served itself, enriched itself, did so on the backs of the people. Madigan and all of his minions got rich down there, making rules that benefited them and their law practices. He's a multimillionaire, even though he's been a state lawmaker for 40 years. How does that happen unless you're doing things that manipulate the system to benefit themselves? I challenge that. I think we can show that Madigan and the FBI agents were cooperating together to establish rules in the impeachment process that didn't give me a chance to challenge the FBI by playing those tapes and also confronting other witnesses that were relevant to my defense. I wanted to call a lot of witnesses, including Rahm Emanuel, a lot of top Democratic politicians in the country who were on those calls with me to show that they were legal calls, but they wouldn't allow that to happen. And they, the political environment was such where it was foreseeable that they would ultimately be able to throw me out if it was just based upon politics. And the impeachment process is not about only politics. It must be about high crimes, other crimes,
Let me jump
as well as being able to prove up those crimes.
Let me jump in real quick because we're basically out of time. You're not a free man early without former President Donald Trump. We don't know what he's going to do in 2024, but you certainly have a microphone and people willing to listen to you. Will you stump for him if he runs again?
Well, I'm a Trumpocrat, and I'll be forever grateful to President Trump for doing what he did for me. Of course, I'd be willing to help him any way I can. I'll always be grateful, as I said. I don't know that he's going to ask me to do it. They didn't ask me to do it in 2020. That was probably the right decision. But of course, I'm grateful to President Trump and always will be. He gave me a new beginning. Too many other people passed me by. And I'm here today largely because of President Trump, the efforts of my wife, Patty, a young man by the name of Mark Vargas, and the hand of God. It was certainly through the grace of God that I came home. And I'm here. I'm blessed. I'm fortunate. I want to do what I can to be helpful in ways where my hard experience can show others some of the things that aren't right in our country, and using the impeachment process and prosecutions as weapons, as political weapons to destroy political figures who they can't beat in elections. This ugly politics of personal destruction where you destroy somebody and thwart the will of the people. This is going to destroy our democracy. So my lawsuit is a step, one of the battles and the many battles that I hope are ahead of us to try to reclaim our democracy. If you have real crimes, throw somebody out of office, or at least give them a fair hearing.
Well, let me ask you this. Just this last week, Governor Pritzker announced that he was going to run again for political office. The fact that you're doing this today, does it have any correlation? I mean, maybe you're trying to be a little bit out there, sort of like Scott and I were talking a little earlier, like a little rock in his shoe, kind of throwing curveballs during his process as he's trying to get reelected?
No, this has nothing to do with his seeking re-election or not seeking re-election. But it does have to do with the standard that was used against me, but it's not applied to anybody else. I didn't break any laws across any lines, and I'm not accusing Governor Pritzker of breaking any laws, but when he gave Mike Madigan $10 million of his own money to Madigan's campaign fund, presumably so that Madigan would move his legislation, that sort of stuff is alleged is the routine kind of politics that they now are criminalizing. I'm not suggesting that that's illegal, unless there was a quid pro quo that they can prove up. But the fact is, he gets away with doing those kinds of things. Madigan was someone who controlled the system down in Springfield, did it on the backs of taxpayers and non-consumers. And now Governor Pritzker is going to run for re-election. I think he's going to have to answer for a lot of those relationships he had with Mike Madigan. I take great pride in the fact that I fought Madigan for 6 years because I was down there and I saw what he was all about. It was all about the lobbyists and the special interests and the lawyers and others who are making a bunch of money down there on the backs of the people. So there's a reason why taxpayers are paying taxes at a rate 40% higher than the national average. It's because of Madigan and that kind of politics. And when Pritzker gives him $10 million to his campaign, that's a whole bunch of money.
We
to get Madigan to continue to do things that he's doing. I would say that's a reason to not vote for Pritzker, but that is not a reason to throw him out of office.
All right, we got to end it there. This is a suit we're going to be following, obviously, very closely. Former Governor Rob Blagojevich, you've always been generous with your time with us on Good Day. Appreciate it again this morning. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you.